All right, so today we're diving into a topic that, well, might raise a few eyebrows. We're talking penis enlargement, specifically a device called Phallosan Forte that claims to be more than just hype.
It's definitely a conversation starter, and thankfully you've got some interesting research for us to dig into.
Yeah, we've got this in-depth product review from source name redacted, and I have to say, even I was surprised by some of the claims. But before we get into the nitty-gritty of Phallosan Forte, maybe we should address the elephant in the room. Why is there even a market for this kind of thing?
It's a huge industry, billions of dollars, all built on an insecurity that a lot of men feel, even if they don't always talk about it. Kind of like the pressure women face with body image, just marketed a little differently.
Right, and the research does kind of suggest the link between, penis size and self-esteem in men. But it's not as simple as bigger is always better, right?
Exactly. I mean, most guys fall within a pretty normal range. And the studies show that for most women, it's not the be-all and end-all that some people might think.
Makes you wonder if it's a solution looking for a problem. Well, I guess that's what we're here to figure out. So Phallosan Forte, what sets it apart from all the other extenders on the market?
Two words, suction and traction. Most of those devices, they just pull, right? But Phallosan Forte, it combines that pulling with this gentle vacuum thing, and they say that's what makes the difference.
Using two forces at the same time,
Hmm.
how does that, change the results compared to just pulling?
Think of it this way. Imagine you've got a rubber band, and you're stretching it out. Now imagine stretching it, but also making it wider at the same time. You're basically giving it more space to potentially grow, right? And there's some research, like that study in the Journal of Sexual Medicine, suggesting this combo could lead to gains in both length and girth.
So there might actually be some real science behind this. But before we get too carried away, just remind us what's going on down there, biologically speaking. It's not magic, is it?
No, no magic here. It's kind of the same principle as, when you work out your muscles, like how they grow from those tiny tears. Phallosan Forte, it basically does something similar to the tissue in the penis.
Hmm.
That suction and traction thing, it creates those micro tears, and then as your body repairs them, theoretically, you get bigger.
So like a workout, but instead of the gym, you're
You get the picture. Exactly. Of course, they need to do a lot more long-term research, but the basic science is pretty interesting.
interesting for sure. But we are talking about a sensitive area here. Comfort's got to be a big factor, right?
Oh, absolutely. And this is actually where Phallosan Forte surprised us. Remember all those diagrams and things we found for the other devices? Some of them looked like torture devices.
Yeah, not exactly something you want to be strapping on down there. So how does Phallosan Forte compare?
It's surprisingly comfortable, according to what people are saying. They have this adjustable belt system and different sizes for the bell, so you can get a more customized fit.
Customized comfort, that's got to be key if you're going to be wearing this thing for hours at a time.
Hmm.
Speaking of customization, though, didn't our research say something about the accessories being a bit much?
Yeah, they give you this whole kit, which sounds great, but you don't really know what you need until you've, well, figured out your measurements. So you might end up with a bunch of extra stuff you don't even need.
Kind of annoying at that price point.
Mm.
Which, speaking of, how does the cost compare to some of the other options out there?
Well, you've got cheaper options like Quick Extender Pro, which is just traction, no suction. Then there's Penamaster Pro. It's kind of similar to Phallosan Forte with that dual action thing, but their system is pretty complicated.
Complicated how?
Like they use weights and all these extra parts. Some people find it's just too much. It's all about finding that balance between effectiveness and comfort and, of course, the price. And then you have size genetics, more affordable, just traction. But the reviews on their customer service are a mixed bag.
So maybe not the best choice if you need help with something. Anything for those with deeper pockets? Any luxury options?
Oh yeah, if you want the Cadillac of penis enlargement devices, there's the Jess Extender. It's all fancy metals and high-end materials, really about the experience. But even with that price tag, there are downsides. Our research suggested that the jumps between the extension rods are kind of big, could be uncomfortable for some.
Good reminder that most expensive doesn't always mean best. Okay, but before we get too lost in all the bells and whistles, we got to talk safety. This isn't something you want to mess around with. So, is Phallosan Forte safe?
If you use it the right way, it's generally considered safe, especially compared to, like, surgery. But, and this is super important, you got to keep it clean, we're talking about a potential breeding ground for bacteria if you're not careful.
Hygiene is key. What about their customer service? Like, what happens if something goes wrong?
That's where things get a little iffy. The reviews for their customer service are kind of all over the place. Some people say they're great, others had to wait forever to get help. And the warranty, It's 2 years, which sounds good, but it can be a pain to actually use.
Speaking of things that could go wrong, Phallosan Forte is also used for something completely different, treating Peyronie's disease. Can you explain what that is and how it's relevant?
Sure. So, Peyronie's disease is basically when the penis develops a curve, often because of scar tissue. It can make sex painful or even impossible. And that's where the whole adjustable thing with Phallosan Forte comes in. By applying traction in specific ways, it can help to gradually straighten things out.
It's almost like physical therapy for the,
Yeah.
fascinating. Okay, we've covered a lot, the science, comfort, cost, even other uses. What does it all mean for the folks listening at home?
I think that's the most important question, isn't it? Because at the end of the day, this is a really personal decision.
Yeah.
There's a lot to unpack, both physically and emotionally, and that's something we should probably dig into a bit more. It really is a personal decision, and I think we haven't really talked enough about the emotional side of things yet.
That's a good point. We've been all about the nuts and bolts, but there's this whole other layer, right? Like, why is this such a big deal for some guys?
Right. It goes back to what we were saying before about all the pressure guys feel, all these crazy expectations. It's easy to see something like Phallosan Forte and think, okay, problem solved. But it might not be that simple.
It's like they say, you can't hate yourself happy, skinny, or rich, right? Some things just go deeper.
Totally. And that's why even with a device like this that seems to work for some people, you really have to ask yourself, why am I doing this? Is this for me, or am I trying to be someone I saw in an ad?
Yeah, good question to ask.
Yeah.
And it makes you think about how these companies market these devices. They play on those insecurities, don't they?
Oh, yeah, for sure. They promise you the moon, right? Confidence, women, better sex, all because of this one thing that might not even be that big of a deal in the grand scheme of things.
So for anyone listening who might be, dealing with those insecurities, I think it's important to say your worth doesn't come from,
Exactly. It comes from you, who you are as a person. And honestly, the people who matter, they're not going to care about that stuff anyway.
and those are things that no device, no matter how much it costs, can give you. But that brings up another point. Even if someone's coming to this for the right reasons, there's still the whole practical side of things. We talked about the good stuff, but what about the downsides of using Phallosan Forte?
Well, for one thing, there's a learning curve. It's not exactly, plug and play. It can be a pain to put on and take off, especially at first.
Especially if you're impatient to see some results.
Exactly. And speaking of, this isn't a quick fix. You have to wear this thing consistently, like for hours every day if you want to see results.
So it's a commitment. And what about like everyday life? Can you be intimate with this thing on?
That is a question for a doctor, not me. But based on our research, it's probably not a good idea to wear it during.
Right. Makes sense. And while we're talking about practical stuff, we can't forget the price. This is an investment.
Yeah, it's not cheap. You really have to weigh that against, your budget and your expectations.
And like you were saying before, their customer service is a bit hit or miss.
Yeah, it's something to think about.
Always good to know
Yeah.
before you spend that much money. One more thing that I was curious about while I was reading this stuff, there's a whole community online about these devices, right?
Oh, yeah, totally. Forums, subreddits, you name it.
So it's like potentially helpful, but also maybe some bad information floating around,
Exactly. You got to be careful who you listen to online, right?
which is why we do this deep dive, I guess.
Yeah.
Cut through all the noise, give people the facts.
Exactly. We've covered a lot of ground here. The science, the cost, the comfort, all of it. Now it's really up to each person to decide if this is right for them.
And remember, your worth, it's not about,
Our listeners get it.
yeah, they're smart. Okay, I think it's time to wrap up this deep dive with some final thoughts. So we really dug deep into this one, huh? Not just the device itself, but all the stuff surrounding it.
Yeah, it's kind of wild how much it all ties together. Body image, confidence, all of that.
Because really, that's what it's all about in the end, isn't it?
For sure. And like we've been saying, it's so easy to get caught up in thinking there's this one thing you need to fix. But real confidence, it's a lot more than that.
It really is. So for the guys listening, what would you say? What's the most important thing to remember?
I think just be kind to yourself. A lot of guys feel this way. You're not alone, and your worth, it doesn't come from that.
It's a whole package, right?
Exactly. And if you are thinking about trying something like Phallosan Forte, just be realistic about it.
We've covered all that today, good and bad.
Right. And in the end, it's your decision. Nobody can tell you what's right for you.
And if you need more help, don't be afraid to talk to somebody, doctor, therapist, whatever.
There's no shame in getting help.
None at all.
Yeah.
Sometimes that's the best way to start feeling good about yourself, right?
Absolutely. Taking care of yourself inside and out.
Couldn't have said it better myself. Well, that was a deep dive, folks. And not just into Phallosan Forte, but into, well, everything else too.
It's all connected.
Hopefully you learned a thing or two. And more importantly, maybe you feel a little bit better about yourself.
That's what we're here for.
Remember, you're awesome just the way you are. Until next time, stay curious.